Hey everyone, welcome to Easter 2021. There is no greater celebration for all of us who point our lives in the direction of Jesus as the resurrection, Easter Sunday. It's all because of Jesus we can have new life. Let's lean in together.
Happy Easter, everybody. It's good to be together on Easter. Easter is such a kind of a standard. It's this moment, even in our culture across the way, that's almost presumed to be understood. And the story is the same. We've been telling it for 2,000 years, that this void, this gap that existed between us and God was fully and finally conquered in Jesus. That anything and everything that could ever separate us, all of our failure, all of our brokenness, all of our embarrassment, all of our shame, all the things that we would never want anyone else to find out about us, Jesus said, I won't let those separate you from the God who created you uniquely and loves you deeply, who sees your value, who sees your worth, who has a place for you, has a purpose for you. God says, I will not let you be separate from me. And so Jesus, with no shame, no failure, no brokenness of his own, willingly gave his life, laid his life down on all of our behalf, paying the full price, nothing left to pay, so that we could be connected with God. And so that God, by his Spirit, would move into each of us who would trust Jesus, into all of us who would trust Jesus, and put us back together piece by piece by piece. And so if you see people who are excited on Easter, we're just people who are living that story every single day. Like, is there anyone here who follows Jesus' marriage, our marriage, our relationships, our friendships, our identity, addictions overcome? Is there anyone who's finding new life, resurrection over and over and over in their life? Anyone with me? Listen. This is our story. It's not a 2,000-year-old story. It's a today story and a yesterday story and the day before that, and we count on it being tomorrow's story and the day after that. That this is what Jesus is about, putting us back together over and over and over. And while we celebrate Easter in such a meaningful and powerful way on this particular day, every Sunday is a resurrection day and every day of the week is a resurrection day for us. Jesus is constantly calling us to life, and I hope that we can all step into that really, really well. And so listen, if you ever missed kind of the nuts and bolts of Easter, that's it. He paid, he rose, he invites us to a new kind of life, a fresh start. If there's anyone looking for a fresh start, Easter is the best day to begin. And so listen, I thought maybe we could spend our time today looking at what do we do in response to that? How do we react to Easter really, really well? And I've got two ways to do this, and both of these have to do with running. Now, I know running is everyone's favorite thing to do. In fact, why don't you take just a second and turn to the person next to you, and on a scale of 1 to 10, tell them how much you would love to go for a run right now. Go. Shot in the dark here. My guess is a lot of low numbers out there, okay? Running, not a fan favorite. I learned to hate running in high school in team sports. When you did something wrong, running is what you got, right? It was a punishment, not interested in that. And then I'm not also talking about that kind of running. I'm also not talking about the kind of running to get in shape, like to lose the COVID-15 or whatever. Not talking about those people who are out there grinding it, pounding the pavement, trying to drop all the weight we've been putting on. That's not what I'm talking about. Instead, I want to call to mind a different image. And actually, I want to talk more about our heart posture, a poise within us that has more to do with kind of how prepared and eager we are than it does to do with how we actually move our bodies. In fact, as you think about this, maybe a better image for running would be like this. You're in grade school. Your parents have taken you to Disneyland. You've arrived early. You've all come through the gate, and those lovely people in mouse ears are holding a rope, and you come right up to the edge of the rope. And finally, the time comes and the rope drops. What do? You run, right? Because this is awesome. This is the best place ever, right? There's an eagerness, there's an excitement that says, just on the other side of this is good for me, and I can't contain it. Or maybe this would be a better image for some. You've just arrived at the beach. You've dropped everything in the sand, and just ahead of you, right? I know we all live on a beach with no water, but we've gone to one where there actually is water. And you get to the edge and you drop everything at the beach, and it's just all downhill to the glorious ocean. And there's only one way to enter the ocean, and that's at whatever speed you can handle, right? And you just run, because there is good, there's excitement, there's an eagerness and anticipation. Or an image from my week this week, we got to go see my nephew down in Arizona. He's 2.5, and he goes everywhere at a run. Everything is exciting, apparently, to this 2.5-year-old. And so maybe this could be an image for you. This is actually how he goes everywhere. When he plans to depart the spot that he's in to arrive maybe just 3 feet away, he does that at full tilt. And he does that with this kind of posture. He bends down to get ready, and he throws his rocket boosters out, And then he takes off, like full tilt. This is the kind of running I want to invite us all into. I think Easter is a great day for running. And so we're going to do this in two different ways. We're going to do both of them from a book in the Bible called John 20. It's a historical account of the very first Easter, which actually has a lot of running in it. There's a foot race. There's some 2,000-year-old trash talk. It's awesome. I want to invite you into it just a little bit. But the first is this. There's a woman who goes to the grave, and immediately what she does is she runs and tells. And so I want to encourage you. This is the first kind of running we're all going to do here on Easter. The first one is run and tell. So turn to the person next to you, and with some conviction and maybe just a little bossiness, look at them and say, run and tell. Go. John chapter 20, verse 1, we pick up the story before sunrise on Easter morning, the very first Easter morning. Now, we always read the story from the end back into the beginning. We know how it's gonna turn out, but you gotta remember that in real time, that was not how life is experienced, right? We don't know what's just around the corner. We don't know what's ahead, even when we try to guess. The same would have been true for this woman, Mary Magdalene. Now, her life, what she did know is that Jesus had turned her life right side up like he has done for so many of us. She had encountered him. She had lived at least part of her life completely separate from everyone, unable to accomplish the things in life that she wanted to, thinking less of herself than she ever could have imagined, a place that she'd never wanted to be until Jesus shows up. And Jesus turns her life right side up and invites her into this group of people who would follow him for the next couple of years. A group of women, we get a lot of their names in Luke chapter 8, and then many of the followers of Jesus that if you've ever encountered the Bible, you know many of their names, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, this whole crew. And she finds a place in this amazing community, sees things and experiences things never before. She experiences a belonging that she's never had before, and then suddenly it's all taken away. Jesus dies on a Friday. Saturday, which in the Jewish culture was a Sabbath, it was a quiet day. They couldn't even be busy to distract themselves. They just kind of had to sit in it. Sunday morning, kind of done with that. And so she gets up before sunrise, and maybe just with no idea where else to go, she goes to grieve the loss of her friend. And in John chapter 20, verse 1, it says this: early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. You can go to the Holy Land these days, you can go to Israel these days and see tombs just like this. A small hole cut in a rock with 2 rooms inside. She sees that and sees the stone is gone and immediately knows something is up. You know, like when you have parents of little kids and the house goes quiet, you know something is up, right? And so she, much like her friend Peter, I imagine her as a pretty impulsive person. She draws a conclusion really, really quickly, and she takes off at a run. Verse 2, it says this: she ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, which, spoiler alert, is probably the guy who wrote this. His name is John. He never names himself, but that's who we're talking about, Peter and John. And she said, they have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they put him. Now, she arrives with this message. She immediately takes something that she has encountered about Jesus, and she runs and she tells. Now, over the next several days, she would slowly work out what this means. If you put this together with another historical account in the book of Luke, we see that Mary wasn't alone at the tomb. She had gone with a group of women. And while Mary bolts immediately to go get the guys, the rest of the women stay there and find out, no, Jesus is alive. That an angel appears and says, listen, y'all are looking for the living among the dead. And so they start running as well, wasting no time. They go and tell the guys. And so this whole group ends up together and starts to tell the very first gospel message, the very first announcement of Jesus' resurrection. It went straight to the people that they knew and told them what they knew about Jesus. She had known over the recent years that anytime she would encounter things from Jesus, she would immediately share that with other people, and she did this. And so now, as they're putting this story together of the resurrection, they got to start doing the math slowly. Like, if he could do this, what else could he do? Like, he already turned my life right side up. I thought it was a total tragedy. I thought somebody had taken him, but now he's alive, and what does this mean? And she starts to do the math and put things together. In fact, not only if he could do this, what else could he do? But if he could do this, what can't he do? She went from deep, deep grief of loss of one who had had so much impact in their life to realize there was even more limitless possibilities than she could imagine. As good as things had gotten, the best was yet to come. And so listen, I think we can just follow Mary's example. That on Easter, maybe one of the very best things that we could do is run and tell. Turn to the person next to you and with a little more bossiness, tell them, run and tell. Listen, it's the best thing you can do. As awesome as it is to be here and sing out the Easter story the way that we have, it's so good. God is worthy of our honor and our praise. It's so good to stand next to other people and sing out the same thing in agreement and remember that we're in this together. Let's continue that throughout this day by telling story on top of story on top of story of encounters we've had with Jesus. How many of you have come to a place in your life where you were sure there was no way out, and at just the right time, Jesus brought a rescue? Anybody with me? You have a story to tell, right? How many of you have encountered Jesus and he turned things right side up when you didn't even know they were upside down? Listen, we have so many of these stories, every single one of us. You don't even have to be a follower of Jesus, but if you've encountered anything about Jesus, the best thing you can do is run and tell. If we filled our days, if we filled Easter lunch or Easter dinner or the next week, when people ask us this week, how was your weekend? What if we filled people's lives and our lives with the stories of Jesus' rescue? The time that he showed up. In fact, here's a few questions to help you get started. What new beginnings has God brought you since last Easter? What kind of rescues has God orchestrated in your life since just 1 year ago? Let me just tell you, I got a long list, right? And I needed some of those at just the right time. Maybe what you could even do right now is grab your phone and send yourself a text and start texting yourself the title of some great stories you're gonna tell later today. Like I could tell you about the way God showed up in our marriage in July. I could tell you about the way he invited me to breakfast in August. I could talk about a way in which he showed up in Friends just yesterday. What are the stories that you could fill your day with, running and telling about Jesus? You see, too many people think that the resurrection is something that just happened 2,000 years ago. And while it began 2,000 years ago, it continues daily and uniquely in the lives of every single person who trusts Jesus. And so let's tell the story, not just of the first resurrection, but every one since. One other trigger question for you. What in your life seemed dead, but God is calling it back to life? Tell the stories. It's Resurrection Day. Let's fill lives with stories. Let's celebrate over and over and over the stories of life that have come from God. Now listen, I don't know about you, but 2020 has not been like in my top 5 years. Anybody with me? Listen, it has been a challenge. Right? And so, but there are also ways in which God has shown up in so many rescuing ways. There are a lot I think he has still yet to orchestrate. And so we don't just run and tell the stories he has already orchestrated. We run and look for the stories he's about to write. How many of us need a fresh start? How many of us need a rescue? There's another place yet that God needs to call to life in our lives. We don't just want to be people who run and tell. We also want to be people who run and look. Turn to the person next to you and say, run and look. You're getting less bossy. Come on now. Listen, I love this. This is one of my favorite passages of John because it's 2,000-year-old trash talk. I just love this. When the women get back to the guys who had been following Jesus and tell them, hey, look, Jesus has resurrected. They're like, I don't believe you. I'm going to go find out. And so this is what happens in verse 3. Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but here it is. The other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. I just love this. Why did you have to write that, John? He'll say it again in a minute. Verse 5, the one who won, the younger one, John, he arrives and he stooped and looked in and he saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. There's lots of reasons for that. Jewish culture being around dead bodies, not an okay thing. And so he hesitated, he paused. But if you know anything about Peter, this friend of Jesus, there's no pause in Peter. He's like a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. So he finally arrives, huffing and puffing, his pride slightly wounded, and runs right in to the tomb. Verse 6, then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Now, I won't go into this today, but there's a lot of historical and reasonable conclusions to be drawn from this. No one would have stolen the body and left things tidy. They wouldn't have even messed with taking the grave clothes off. The way they would have been lying there, the way he's describing, archaeologists have actually found other corpses with nothing but bones and the things arranged in just the way that was described, only there was nothing with Jesus. It was as if whoever was there simply rose up and left the clothes behind. Like, there's so much in this to lean into. I won't go into it too far today, but Peter goes in and he realizes This is not normal. Something has happened that is spectacular here. So finally, John works up the boldness in verse 8, and the other disciple, John, who had reached the tomb first, in case anyone wondered who won the race, he also went in and he saw and believed. For until then, they had not understood that the scriptures that Jesus must rise from the dead. Listen, they started putting things together. What happened was people that they trusted came along and said, listen, something has happened that is worth taking a look at. And so a foot race breaks out. And Peter and John go and see for themselves. And I wonder if maybe the best thing we can do beyond running and telling is to run and look, to take yet another look at what Jesus is up to in our lives and the lives of people around us, to go and find out. I know that on Easter, because of the value in our culture, because of your deep love for other people, there are probably lots of people on Easter Sunday who have found their way either into church for the first time or back into a gathering like this and are trying to sort through kind of what does this actually mean? Why does an event 2,000 years ago have any bearing on today whatsoever? Right? It seems a little bit out there. That had to be the same thing that John and Peter were thinking. Ladies, you are messed up in the head, you're grieving, we got to go find out. And so they went and they looked. And as they started to see, it started to come together. And over the next days ahead, you should read it in John chapter 20, Jesus helping them into understanding all that it meant. Because if Jesus can conquer the grave, then everything he said before that must also matter. It must also be true. He must be the one to trust more than anyone. And so they started to put this life together, but they only did that because they ran and looked. So listen, I just want to invite some of you who are like, I'm not super sure about this whole Jesus thing. I'm not really sure why Easter matters, except it's a great meal with some great people. But it does, and if you've already taken one step, you might as well take another. You've already come to look, you might as well look just a little bit further. In fact, let me just encourage you to begin in the most trusted place possible. Rather than me tell a bunch of stories, what if you went to the people you trust the most, who seem to care about this whole Jesus thing, and you just ask them a really simple question. What difference has Jesus actually made in your life in the last 7 days? And just see what story they respond to you with. Here's what I know about everyone who actually lives with Jesus. They have a lot of stories from the last 7 days about how Jesus has shown up in their lives, about how God is calling us to life, renewing us, giving us a fresh start after fresh start, standing us up one more time and walking us forward, bringing rescue where we never thought it was before. If you want to find out if Jesus makes any difference, begin with the people you know and trust the most and give them just a little space to tell some stories. Or better yet, invite them to a meal or go grab some great coffee and sit down and let them tell you some stories. Just take one more look. It could be that just on the other side of one more look is life more than you could have imagined. Those of us who are following Jesus, that's what we found. We took a look and Jesus showed up. And we took another look and he showed up. In fact, all of you who are followers of Jesus, keep running to look. It may be better than it's ever been with him, but their best is yet to come. There's nothing that compares with what he has imagined and designed for each and every one of us. And so we keep running to look. Those of you who are trying to look in Jesus' direction, who are trying to sort things out and put them together, like I said earlier, and you seem to resonate, listen, 2020, not top 5. In fact, the more we kind of step out of this, I realize I have just enough time to realize how tired I actually am. And so we're actually stepping into a season, and I want to invite all of you to jump in with us. We've been praying and thinking about what God has in mind for the people of Las Vegas and the people of Canyon Ridge. And what we believe deeply is that after such a challenging trudge of an 18 months that we've all just come through and are still kind of finding our way out of, that God is saying, listen, survival is not what I have in mind for you. I actually want joy to be the primary characteristic of your lives as my followers, that our celebration would not be limited to just Easter. It wouldn't be beyond, but that we'd actually step into a season of God bringing joy into our lives in fresh ways. And so I want to invite you, we're going to do 4 things over the next 4 months, and I want to invite you back to any and all of it, in person or online. The first is this, people. The second is all about rest and breath. The third is about joy, and the fourth is about pace. We believe that after the challenging time that all of us, the unprecedented time that we've all been through, we need some real recovery. And that joy and recovery that God has in mind for us will not happen without great people around us. And so starting next week, we're jumping into a season of rallying people around us. Not just surrounding ourselves with great people, but making the people around us great as we show up in the way that God has invited us to. I think it's going to be an awesome series for you to grab a few people along and take a journey along with, inviting God to say something fresh and new, to breathe a fresh start into the people around you. And then as summer starts, especially we're going to start right around Mother's Day, we've been saying it this way. Everybody feels like they need a breath, but not everybody knows how to breathe. It turns out that more Airbnbs and Verbos have been booked this summer than any time in history, right? Because people are ready to run out and do all the things that we didn't get to do for the last 18 months. But if we go out and sprint and go crazy trying to fill our times with all the things that we've missed, we'll be just as tired come fall as we are right now, just a different kind. But God actually invites us to be replenished, refreshed, to deeply rest in ways that only he can help us into. So we're going to look into it together to really learn how to take a breath and rest and pace ourselves. And then in the middle of summer, too many people think that God is all about removing things from our life. But God is honestly always placing really great in our life. And so we're going to lean into enjoying some things like laughter, like feasting, like adventure, and one other thing that I can't remember, but it's awesome. Totally just blanked, happens all the time. But he invites us to savor life with him. Let's collect some memories and some moments of real joy and enjoyment of God. We're gonna lean into it this summer. And then as we step out of the summer and into the fall, we're gonna talk about a healthy pace that God has invited us into, setting some things down, picking up some really helpful things, and walking with a pace that, imagine this, if a whole bunch of people walked into the fall full of joy, of great memories, and anticipation for what God has ahead. I just want to invite you, if you need a place to take a look at Jesus, to take another look, to take a fresh look, to step into a fresh start in a new season, the people of Canyon Ridge in this place would love to take that journey with you. Listen, as we celebrate, as we tell all of these stories, as we run to tell, and as we run and look again and look again and look again, God shows up in all the best ways. He writes great stories. In fact, maybe one of the best ways we can do this is to share a very recent story from someone here in our church. Her name's Tamara. I just met her a few months ago. But her story is one of a mother who consistently, over years and decades, was running to tell and running to tell and running to tell all the way to the end of her life. And at just the right moment, her daughter, Tamara, decided to run and look. And God is showing up in all the best ways. This is her story.
When I was a kid, I used to go to the old rural country church that my mother grew up in, so I got baptized. Not fully understanding what it meant, but doing it because, well, my cousins were doing it. At the time, my mom was working 2 jobs. She was a single mom, raising my sister and I, and trying to go to school to get a degree in engineering. So at the time that I became like 16, 17 years old, that's when my mother decided she needed a change in her life. And she started going to church. And then what used to be fun for me seemed like it wasn't fun anymore because my mom was making me go because she was going through her thing of getting closer to God and turning her life over to God. So I went through a rebellious stage. And it was a tug of war for a few years. And then finally when I became old enough to make decisions on my own, 18, I'm an adult now, and I fell into the world and all its trappings. It was a life filled with a lot of mistakes. Trying to be in control of something that I really wasn't in control of. But over the years, as I got older and had a child of my own, my mom was still taking her walk with God and turning her life over to God. And I could see subtle changes in her. There were some issues that I was having personally. I was struggling. My marriage was just tanking, and I couldn't figure out why. My mom told me, she goes, pray about it. I'm like, come on, really? That's what you got for me? Pray about it? I'm asking. She goes, no, pray about it. Then I got a call one day from my sister, and she said, you gotta come home. I dropped everything, and I ran home to Ohio, and they found out that my mom had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She would always tell me, your life here is temporary. What I want for you, what I want for your sister, is life everlasting with God. So look at it again. And she goes, I'm serious. Sit down and have a conversation. And I had a really long conversation with God by my mother's bedside. I said, God, please. She's done so many things and I've learned so much from her. She's been such an inspiration. Even when we didn't get along, help me to accept this because she won't suffer anymore. Before she took her last breath, I felt her hand do like this in mine. Like she was letting go of me to take somebody else's hand. And I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you so much. I lost my mother in November. My divorce was finalized in November. When I thought, what could get worse? Nothing could be worse. God is there though. All I have to do is talk to him. He can ease my pain just by talking to him. I realized one day I need to get out of the driver's seat and sit on the passenger side. And when I need direction, look to the one who is in the driver's seat. My life was empty, but now my life is starting to become full of joy, peace, calmness, love, vulnerability, and openness. I'm not blocking those things anymore. I'm getting baptized. Now I understand what it is that I'm doing. I'm surrendering. I'm throwing away my past to be a new creation in God. And I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I know that through the support of the people around me, the community that I've become a part of, God is there. When I come up out of the water, I'll be leaving behind the loneliness and the walls that I've built up to stop me from being open to everything that God has promised me. No matter what may come in the future, the walls will be gone.
God is so good. He's the author and the finisher of our faith. And so we're going to stand, we're going to sing this, that there's nothing better than him. And I want to invite you to just lift your hearts and voices. Let's worship together. And I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. And man's empty praise and treasure that fade and never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Come on, let's declare this today. And oh, there's nothing better than you. And there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing is better than you. We know it's true, yes. And I'm not afraid show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing all together. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. Come on, you sing it today. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn grace into garden. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. He's faithful, church. Oh, there's nothing. You sing it. Nothing is better than, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. 'Cause nothing is better than you. You turn grace. You turn grace into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You turn grace into gardens. You turn grace into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. And you're the only one who can. And you're the only one who can. And you're the only one who can. We celebrate you, Lord.
Well, I hope that today is a day full of running and telling, that you have stories already called to mind and people that you would tell them to. Let's not just be hearers of what God has said, let's be doers of what God has said. All right, and for all of you who are finding your way in God's direction, for all of us, let's run and look. Take another look. Look again, look again, look again. God has so much good in mind. Whatever you are facing, it's not too big for him. He can handle it. He's got you. He has good in mind for you. If you'll take a step in his direction, run and look. And so may all of us trust God more and more and more. May today be a day full of celebration, of storytelling, of laughter and tears, and just the deepest kind of gratitude for how good God has been. And may that fill us with expectation and anticipation for all the good that God has ahead of us. Regardless of the challenge we may face, regardless of the adversity that will definitely come, God will show up strong and good and make a way through for all of us. May we trust him deeply. In Jesus' name, amen.
So as we head out, let's run to tell and let's run to look, to constantly be reciting the stories that God has been writing in our lives and the people that we know, and to look consistently at him and what he's up to next, to be shaped more and more like him as he calls us and the people we love to life. If there's any way we can support you along the way, we would love to. Feel free to send a text. Send "What's Next" to 94090, and some great people from our team will follow up with you very soon. We'll see you soon.